Hello, today we are going to be covering what makes a good paragraph. While you may not be writing a ton in paragraph form in your future career, the basics of writing a good paragraph matter because you might have to, especially if you're writing emails with a customer or to advertise things. But also the idea of a good paragraph is important to just the way we communicate. We can take the ideas behind what is a good paragraph and apply it to just any communication and have good communication. So we're going to start with what makes a good paragraph, especially as you prepare for your first project where you have to write in paragraphs. So why does a paragraph matter? I know I just kind of answered that some, but in general, paragraphs are part of longer writing. So if you're going to have to write something a little bit longer, or if you ever have to give a speech, you're going to be doing that in paragraphs. So we have to start with that foundation and grow bigger. We started with the foundation of what makes a complete thought, or what makes a sentence, and now we're moving to the next step, which is what makes a paragraph and how can we do that well. This also allows you to develop your ideas and provide support, which is really important as you're writing because I can make a quick statement, but if I can't support it, I can't defend it, or I can't elaborate on my ideas, my communication is not going to be as strong. Essay writing is a bulk of your writing in terms of a formal English class. And so again, I've already admitted we may not be doing traditional English essays in this course, but I want to prepare you for an essay in the future or just anything that you have to write in a longer form like an essay, because paragraphs are essential to overall essays. They're essential to overall speeches or bulletins. And so again, we just have to be able to do that well, because a paragraph is the same as communication in a way. It's a form of communication, I guess we could say. And communication is key to our success at the end of the day. So, how can we organize a paragraph? Well, if we're doing a paragraph in more of an argumentative style or just a way where we have to develop and support our ideas, we typically will have the main point, our support, our commentary, and then a transition of some kind. So the main point is typically called a topic sentence and found at the start of a paragraph. It's giving us like, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about in this paragraph. So that way we're clear as your audience taking in your information. Our support can be evidence, it can be quotes, it can be expert opinion, it can just be logical thoughts. Evidence and support come in different forms, and it's up to you to decide what works best in this moment. Our commentary then connects our support back to our topic sentence, back to our main point. So how does your evidence, how does your example connect to your main point? It may feel obvious to you, but it's not always obvious to your audience. Or if your support can be interpreted in more than one way, potentially, you want to make sure that your audience is interpreting it the right way, which is your way, at least for this argument or this persuasive moment. We will go back and forth between those. I call them chunks, right? Because like it's a chunk that sticks together. So some paragraphs may have 2 or 3 chunks, some may have 5, but you'll repeat that as necessary until you get to the end of this point. And then at that point, you'll have a transition of some kind. This is just a reminder of how everything connects. You don't want your readers, you don't want your audience to have to do all the work. Or if you're wrapping up, this is the last paragraph, it's just like a nice little bow at the end to tie it all together and kind of remind them what you need them or want them to do. So there are 6 key things all paragraphs need, and I'm going to walk you through each 6 just to kind of give you an idea of what this means and how it can look, and it's to help you think about as you write in this class. So every paragraph should be united. It should have unity. That means every sentence should relate back to the topic sentence, and as an introductory writing course, introductory English course, it makes sense to have your topic sentence at the beginning of the paragraph until you develop more confidence as a writer and more style. We want to make sure that we keep everything related to that topic sentence, so don't go off on a rabbit trail or a sidebar. Focus in, almost like if you've ever seen a horse that has the blinders on like this, where it's like the typically black, like a little black output, and it keeps them focused straight on the trail ahead and reduces distractions around them. Each paragraph should focus on a single idea. So a new idea, we have a new paragraph. Sometimes, if your paragraph is getting really long, and you feel that you need to just break it up for flow of thought, that's fine. Just have a good transition there to be there. And this is a quote I've pulled from an old textbook, and it says, no matter how much you may like a certain sentence, if it does not support the main idea of the paragraph, it must be cut. And so I've shown you that in this example. This is a paragraph from Writing Matters, which is where I just got that other quote. And you can see that the orangey yellow is our topic sentence in a way. Red would be things we just need to cut out. It doesn't really do anything to support the topic sentence or develop the ideas. And while the person may be like, well, I think this, I kind of like want to tell you how I feel, or I think this is an interesting tidbit, it just doesn't really keep the paragraph unified. And so if we were doing a formal writing, I would suggest we cut those out. So I'm going to have you pause here to read this, and then we will move on. So our next part of writing a good paragraph is coherence. So coherence is when we are logically connected idea to idea. So it ties in really well to unity, but you could be united in what you're talking about, but not be coherent, not be logical. There are 3 ways to kind of keep you coherent. The first is to repeat key words with a purpose. We do this to draw attention to the recurring ideas and to knit it all together. We can use pronouns to refer to previous ideas in a clear way, but we need to make sure that reference is clear. And there is an inquisitive activity we'll do with this later about how having pronouns be clear. So if I mention 2 people in a sentence, I wouldn't want to just say he or she in the next one, because which one is that? So we can keep it clear by not getting too chunky and always repeating a long idea. We also want to use transitions. Those are really important in paragraphs. We can use them to show cause and effect. We can make comparisons. We can change expectation or direction. So if you want to like flip, so like you might think this, however, that however helps change direction in our brain. It can be used to introduce examples, and we can also show similarities and differences. Your reader or your audience, if it's oral communication, should not have to pause to figure out your connections. You need to be coherent and clear for them. They don't have to do some additional detective work. So the next one would be well developed. Even if we are not writing an argumentative or academic paper, you still want to be well developed in that you're providing good details for them. These can be, sorry, just making sure I didn't lose anything. These can be examples, reasons, facts, statistic, details, expert opinions, personal experiences, visuals. Those personal experience and visuals may not always go well, especially as a beginning writer, but I wanted to mention that you could have it in there. And these are just your support and reasons to prove your topic sentence. So even if you're not trying to write an overly formal argument, you still want to do this. If you want to convince someone to go eat at Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's, we have our well-developed evidence. Your support should have some specific criteria. So it should be relevant, specific, adequate, representative, and documented. So when we say representative, we do mean that's just not atypical. It's not a minority experience. It truly represents what you're trying to make the point. And documented just means giving credit where credit is due. We will do that in a more formal way later in the semester, but for now, as long as you just say where you got the information, who told you that, great. Next, we want it to be relevant, which was on that previous one. But this relevance deals a little bit more, and it's not dealing with a little bit more. We want to be a little bit more clear about it, excuse me. So anything included in your paragraph should support the topic sentence. So your evidence needs to be relevant, as in it connects to your point, connects to your main idea. So you want to include information that fits the topic and helps the reader understand and believe your position or your thesis. And so support your claim, help it understand. Don't just throw in random information because you want to or you thought it was an interesting fact. Have that discussion at another time, not when you're trying to have a clear, coherent, and unified paragraph. You want your ideas to be carefully connected. And so there's not much here other than just like be purposeful in your way of connecting your ideas and including your ideas, and craft it carefully with thought, not just like throwing things together and moving on quickly. And then lastly, if you can, try to make it interesting. That doesn't always work for writing, because sometimes you have to write on a topic that you're assigned, or you have to speak on something that you've been asked to speak on. But try to be interesting. Be personal in your selection of evidence. Don't just get monotone and talk like a robot, right? And that the interesting comes with time and experience, but typically, if we're going to talk about what makes a good paragraph, I at least wanted to mention it should be interesting. The last thing I want to mention to you, that's not quite about what makes a good paragraph, it's not one of our 6 characteristics, is that a lot of students get really caught up in what's the required sentence length for a paragraph. The honest answer is there is none. Some paragraphs may be 2 or 3 sentences, some may be 20 sentences. At the end of the day, we think about the requirements of a paragraph and what you needed to say versus the length. If you were like, I'm super stressed if I don't know what I should be aiming for, general idea, you might want to be around 7 sentences as a minimum. But again, that's going to vary because some points might need more support because it's not a commonly believed idea, or it's like a big point in your argument, and if they don't believe in this point, they're not going to believe anything. But then other things might be really quick to the point, such as your introduction, like, hey, this is the topic, this is why it matters, here's my argument, now let's go. Right? So don't expect a key sentence length for every paragraph, but also just make sure that you've expressed your ideas clearly, they're united, they're well developed and supported, and they're relevant to your argument or your position or what you want to say.